We begin the news in Nigeria's South, where Delta State Governor Sheriff Oborevwori has expressed outrage over the brutal attack on military personnel in Okwama community. In a strongly worded statement, Governor Oborevwori condemned the killings, calling them unprovoked and alien to the culture of Deltans. The governor extended his deepest condolences to the families of the slain soldiers, the Nigerian Army, and the armed forces as a whole. The governor urged Delta residents to remain calm and law-abiding, assuring them that the state will continue to prioritize the safety and security of its citizens. In the meantime, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, had directed immediate investigation and arrest of those involved in a heinous crime. And elsewhere, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project has called for the immediate reinstatement of Senator Abdul Ningi, who was suspended from the Senate for alleging lawmakers padded the 2024 budget. Ningi, representing Bauchi Central, claimed a discrepancy of 3.7 trillion naira between the approved budget and the one being implemented, which led to his 3-month suspension. In a statement, SERAP considers Ningi a whistleblower and his actions a positive act of good citizenship. The group stressed that suspending Ningi discourages future whistleblowing and undermines transparency. The organization urged Senate President Akpabio to reinstate Senator Ningi and refer the pardon allegations to anti-corruption agencies for investigation. SERAP argues that investigating the pardon claims and reforming the budget process would rebuild public trust in the Senate. In the meantime, corruption is an issue that has consistently reared its head in Nigeria's socio-political space for years. It has been blamed for many, if not most, of the country's developmental setbacks. Reacting to the issue, a member representing Oriade State constituency in the Osun State House of Assembly, Komi Ajibola, lamented the huge resources the country has lost to corruption, saying if such monies had been properly utilized, Nigeria would not be struggling with infrastructural deficits. Komi Ajibola on Friday disclosed that he has written to the leadership of the National Assembly to demand that death penalty should be made a punishment for corruption. Ajibola further said the anti-corruption laws and acts in their existing forms in Nigeria are not result-oriented, hence the need for the introduction of capital punishment. Joining us on the news to discuss this is Suleiman Akonde, who is a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a lot of countries have abolished and continuously voted against capital punishment, irrespective of the crime committed. But with the level of monumental fraud and financial impropriety that has characterized Nigeria's public space in recent years, is it high time for such a law to be revisited and reenacted?
Good afternoon, viewers. While I agree with the lawmakers that corruption has really done a lot of damage to our development as a nation, I beg to differ that death sentence or such a huge capital punishment should be given for corrupt practices. It is likened to killing a ant with a sledgehammer. While various law and acts in Nigeria is very explicit and clear on what constitutes act of corruption and the punishment that should be meted on anybody that involved in act of corruption, we should rather work on how to rejig and make this policy more effective, make the necessary apparatus of government to apply the necessary sanctions to corrupt practices. So practically, world over, the death sentence or capital punishment as good as that has been abolished. So introducing that at this point in time will be a bit of a setback, and such punishment will be anti-democratic and a bit inhumane.
But then we've seen these death penalty punishments work in some Asian and Arab countries with corruption incidences said to have reduced drastically. So if Nigeria chooses not to go by the way of capital punishments, you've talked about other laws and other policies that can help deal with issues of embezzling public funds by public actors. When we now have these same actors who are meant to enforce the law and be held by the rule of law violate these laws, what can a country do?
Yeah, it is simple. You see, the idea is this: using such excessive punishment that does not mean corrupt practices should not be dealt with decisively. While in personally, I've advocated that why can't we make corruption at least um, very hard and very impossible to perpetrate. Let's even assume someone stole from the coffers of the state. Why don't you make the process in such a way that that person have nowhere to spend the money? If that person, such people have nowhere to spend the money, I believe corruption will reduce drastically. That is why we need to work on some of these laws and our financial crime act, so that even if you're taking this money, we'll be able to see X, Y, and Z. Oh, Mr. X is working in so place. This is the amount he receives as salary. If he is spending beyond his means, at least he should be able to explain to us where he's getting the money. So using those excessive law, if you look at, you're giving example of most of this country in Southeast Asia, that has not really reduced corruption in the right sense. Rather, people will perpetrate other form of corruption that we really know aside from the financial corruption. Look at the United States and United Kingdom, for example. Not that corruption don't happen in this place, but those perpetrators of corruption find it hard to spend their loot. So when we put our policies in place and we put the right things in place, perpetrators of corruption will become something that people will even be uninterested in. They will not even see it as something that is fashionable to do. I believe there are other ways we can deal with people without giving them a death sentence. To me, giving death sentence to corrupt officials is extreme. We can actually look at other ways of doing the things.
So, of course, we have the TSA, we have the whistleblower policy, we also have the EFCC and other anti-graft agencies that we can consider as measures by which we deal with the issue of corruption in the country. But then we've seen these anti-graft agencies often lament that there are judicial bottlenecks when it comes to prosecuting corrupt cases. So, for these agencies, what are the best ways to address their frustrations as regards investigating cases of corruption, arresting the culprits, taking them to courts, and having them recovering the funds from these said culprits, and having these people face the full wrath of the law?
Yeah, one of the things I think we should do is that the enumeration packages of these anti-corruption agencies need to be looked into. That is, you cannot pay those that are supposed to enforce your law. You're paying them peanuts, and at the same time, you expect them to be up and doing, whereby the perpetrators of corruption are even ready to pay them more. It becomes the highest bidder. That is, those you are fighting against are ready to pay those that are enforcing the law. So they will surely give in. Number two is this. I think people have also advocated for this. We should create a special court that will try corrupt practices, be it financial corruption or any other corruption. What we see happen in our courts now is that our judges are overwhelmed. And the third thing I would also like us to look at is that the laws against Money Laundering Act and financial crime, among other things, should also be looked into, so that punishment and every other thing should be expedite, and it should be a total, not a kind of partial. And again, the act of giving bail condition to perpetrators of corruption should also be looked into. It is becoming a joke. So all these are things that we need to look at.
So it's also been said that the financial sector, most especially the banks now, also aid these people in moving their illicit funds around. And of course, there's been a lot of talk as regards employing the use of technology to trace, monitor, and trap these funds, but we've not been able to have that in our strides in Nigeria. Do you think there are things that can be done by the instrumentation of technology, and of course having these banks also comply with certain rules and regulations that help with dealing with money laundering, terrorism financing, embezzling of funds, round tripping, and all those financial crimes in the country?
Yeah, a lot can be done. For example, if you ask yourself, why do we have the BVN, the NIN in the first place? Go to places like American, for example. Your social security number is everything. They just need to trace a lot of things down to you, right from your water bill to everything. So if you have a BVN in place, why won't we be able to trace illicit fund? Why won't we be able to trace financial crime among other things? So all we just need to do is that our institutions need to be up and doing so that crimes that has to do with the banks and other financial institutions that aid these corrupt practices could also be monitored. The number two is this: don't forget that a lot of our money in circulations cannot even be traced. That is, people prefer spending cash instead of using other means of transaction. So if we can make sure that at least there is result to call for financial literacy, that everybody is brought into the into the shield of financial institution, we'll be able to trace what is spent and what is earned by individuals. So by doing this, we'll be able to trace that, okay, this is the amount that is spent or expended by individual or corporate organization. Don't forget, a lot of Nigerians are still on bank or underbanked. So a lot needs to be doing in this space. Most especially, we need to also get our data right. Get the data right, and corruption will be reduced maximally.
Suleiman Akonde, thank you so much for sharing your profound insight with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's now tell you that the Africa Youth Development Foundation has condemned the kidnapping of over 200 school children from Kuriga in Kaduna State, including another 15 from Sokoto State. The foundation also expressed worry over the frequent abduction of children from schools in the country, saying they are eroding the gains made in the nation's educational sector. Idong Joseph reports.
The kidnapping of over 280 school pupils in the Kuriga area of Kaduna State is the largest school abduction case in Nigeria. The incident, which occurred in Kaduna and Sokoto, represents the 17th attack on schools within a decade, which has raised concern of stakeholders. They said this is increasing the number of out-of-school children in the country and eroding the gains made in the educational sector.
Education is a building block of every society and a fundamental human right, as uneducated children can become willing tools in the hands of criminal and terrorist groups now and even in future.
With the whereabouts of the kidnapped children yet to be determined, many Nigerians say they want their rescue as quick as possible.
We cannot allow this to become another Chibok situation. AYGF calls upon all key stakeholders, both nationally and internationally, to intervene and secure the safe return of the kidnapped children.
We appeal to the security agencies to do everything possible, including the government of Kaduna State, to do everything possible to rescue and bring back these young ones and their teachers.
Stakeholders also urged the government to take steps in addressing the root causes of kidnapping in Nigerian schools.
AYGF advocates for increased resources and support for vulnerable communities like Chikum, after targeted by kidnappers, as well as every community where schools exist in Nigeria. Revamping the Safe School initiative. The government must revisit its commitment to this initiative.
They are calling on government to live up to its responsibilities and ensure kidnapping becomes a thing of the past. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Now, the National Human Rights Commission has blamed the abduction of 286 students and teachers from two schools in Kaduna on the failure of the federal policing system in Nigeria. This was disclosed by the Commission's Executive Secretary, Anthony Ojukwu, in an interaction at a stakeholders dialogue on state police organized by the Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center in Abuja. According to Ojukwu, such a disaster could have been averted if the nation had not prioritized the protection of the elite and affluent in the society at the expense of the masses. He further drummed up support for the introduction of state police to tackle banditry and other security challenges ravaging the country. In an apparent response to the hardship being experienced in Nigeria, the Lagos State government today launched the Onjeko food markets to offer discounted prices on essential food items across the state. The markets will offer Lagos residents a 25% discount on staple food items like rice, beans, garri, bread, eggs, tomatoes, and pepper. The State Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Benga Motoshaw, disclosed this in a statement. The markets will be open at 27 locations in Ikeja, 6 in Lagos Island, 9 in Ikorodu, 5 in Ekpe, and 10 in Badagry divisions. You're watching News Central now. A break will do here. We still have more stories to come your way when we return. Don't go away. We'll now take you to Niger Delta region in Nigeria, where some communities have called on the federal government to act against companies to clean up the areas polluted in the communities due to their oil exploration over the years. News Central's Neo Moniyi tells us more in this report.
Shell is considering leaving the oil-rich Niger Delta region of Nigeria. However, communities like the town of Ogale in Rivers State want Shell to address environmental issues before exiting.
I'm appealing to the wonderful shareholders of Shell all over the world.
Shell sold its onshore assets in Nigeria to a consortium. Over the years, oil spills from theft, vandalism, and operations have resulted in significant costs for Shell related to repairs and legal cases. Residents in Bayelsa State say the decades of oil exploration have damaged farms and rivers.
Nobody's growing any crops around there. There used to be farms around there. So the oil spill affected the host community in a way that we are yet to recover from.
These things has also caused the underground water in Ogale to be damaged because they are no longer using this thing again. So the underground water has spoiled.
Environmental groups are urging Nigerian authorities to ensure Shell safely dismantles old infrastructure or pays for its removal before leaving.
What Shell and ITO needs to do is to ensure that as they are divesting and the new owner is taking over, the issue of cleanup, remediation, and compensation, including pending court cases, are properly considered and addressed.
This is not the first time an oil company is divesting its assets. Just so happens because it's SPDC and the legacy that they have left or they're leaving the Niger Delta is simply not good.
Shell has long maintained that most spills are due to oil theft and interference with pipelines. When announcing the $2.4 billion sale, Shell stated that responsibilities for addressing liabilities would transfer to Renaissance, the buying consortium. While the Nigerian government has indicated it will not block the Shell deal, the head of the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission said oil majors must demonstrate compliance with the commissioning rules before approval to exit. However, the regulator did not name Shell and declined to comment on compliance by Shell or other companies. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omoni.
And I'll tell you that Nigeria's Minister of State for Education has called for concerted efforts aimed at ending social vices among students. This was made during the inauguration of a special committee for the campaign against social vices in secondary schools and tertiary institutions across the country. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, reports.
Studies have shown that some Nigerian students on campuses and in secondary schools exhibit different behaviors which do not only affect their performance, but also hinders the social growth and stability of the nation. Social vices such as substance abuse, cybercrime, cultism, rape, prostitution and sexual harassment, among others, present great concerns to parents, government and the society.
Vices are based in character. It's based on your morality, it's based on your future, the best everything that can identify you as a human.
These vices cast a shadow over the brilliant and vibrant environment of our tertiary institution and hinder the development of our future leaders.
To help address and mitigate the effects of social vices on Nigeria's educational system, the federal government recently inaugurated a special committee for this purpose.
To the esteemed members of this committee, the weight of responsibility you carry is significant.
Some of the terms of reference of the committee include combat social biases among the students through comprehensive and collaborative approach. Also to raise awareness in promoting positive values and provide support to students.
The task before us is monumental, yet the potential impact of the future of our young generation and our nation is indeed transformative.
Expressing concern over the prevalence of social vices among youths, Nigeria's Minister of State for Education called for a review of student certification process.
The core values upon which we award our degree need to be looked critically and see how we can strengthen it. Basically, knowledge and character. But as of today, in the ministry, we are saying also skill has to be a component of it.
Advocates say while social vices threaten the moral fabric of the nation, they called for continuous efforts aimed at raising awareness on the dangers it poses to students. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonk Joseph.
In a related development, a 20-year-old hairstylist, Josephine Oduno, and a dispatch rider, Edesemi Ikporo, 30 years, have been arrested by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, for selling and distributing illicit drug-laced chin-chin to school students and at social parties in Yenagua, Bayelsa State. NDLEA officials on patrol around Okpolo area of Yenagua had on Sunday, March 10, 2024, intercepted the motorcycle dispatch rider and recovered 200 grams of chin-chin produced with cannabis sativa, which he was on a mission to deliver to a buyer. A swift follow-up operation led to the arrest of the hairdresser, Josephine, who distributes the drugged chin-chin from the salon where she works in Pansia area of Yenagua. A search of the salon also led to the recovery of 3.00 kilograms, bringing the total weight of the illicit substance seized from the duo to 3.2 kilograms. Away from that, the Middle Belt Patriots, a prominent advocacy group, has raised strong objections to the federal government's recent proposal for state governors to allocate land for herders. In a statement released on Saturday, the group condemned the directive, expressing concern that it would worsen the already volatile security situation in the Middle Belt region. The Middle Belt has been plagued by violent clashes between farmers and herders, with some herder groups accused of affiliation with armed militias. The group fears that allocating more land for grazing could further inflame these tensions. The statement, signed by the Director of Media and Strategic Communications, Stephen Kefas, accuses the federal government of prioritizing herder interests at the expense of indigenous populations. Now, about 150 houses were destroyed by a windstorm that ravaged residents of Injereng in Mayo Belwa local government area of Adamawa State. According to the victims, the windstorm started at about 2 p.m. on Saturday, which culminated into rains, which damaged rooftops and walls of blocks. A veterinary student who lamented his ordeal said he was on his way to his usual evening exercise when he was called. While revealing the extent of the damage, the state lawmaker representing Nasarawa in Injereng, Binyeri, at the Adama House of Assembly, Babangida Njuda, says his immediate task is to present the problems to his colleagues at the floor of the House of Assembly.
It's ravaged almost 150 houses. Livelihoods are destroyed, and houses are destroyed. and some people were injured. So in fact, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. There is no break. So it directly affects the system. So I want to encourage the community. And honestly, I want to, as a matter of fact, meet with the ACRISA. I want to meet with the coordinator of ACRISA to be able to see how we can be able to come into the community and then see how we can partner with the community to bring about afforestation so that we can have trees that can serve as windbreaks.
To health matters now, over 240 clinicians, including medical doctors, nurses, midwives, and community health extension workers, have undergone intensive training on basic mental health care in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states. This initiative by the World Health Organization and European Union aims to equip frontline healthcare workers with the necessary skills to effectively manage mental health issues among meningitis patients and prevent further casualties. News Central's Umaru Kirawa completes the reports.
27 reported deaths attributed to meningitis in Nigeria's Yobe state alone in recent weeks. This joint effort underscores the urgent need for coordinated action to curb the outbreak and safeguard public health in the Northeast region.
Mental health and psychosocial support is one of the pillars of response for the cerebrospinal meningitis. And I believe this particular group of clinicians that are trained will also be able to provide basic psychosocial counseling to, of course, some of the family that have lost their loved ones in the event of the CSM outbreak.
In the face of the deadly outbreak, it is important to ensure that clinicians are able to provide holistic care, taking into consideration not only the physical symptoms, but also the mental health implications.
It is a big challenge in the whole world, more especially here in Nigeria, as we are going into this hard situation. Because you see a lot of people, they cannot even have 3 square meals. It affects them psychologically.
So when you are talking of the causes, there is heredity. Drugs and alcohol can equally bring about mental disorder. Stress can bring about mental disorder.
The selected healthcare workers in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe State were equipped with how to handle the challenges posed by mental health, among others.
I believe the participants will be better equipped and skilled to be able to early identify mental health disorders that I've mentioned, provide basic or initial care to the patient, and of course be able to early refer to secondary health care.
This joint initiative by the WHO and EU is just a step in the wider effort to manage mental health related cases. The training program aims to not only equip healthcare workers with the prerequisite skills to provide immediate care, but also to build resilience within the affected communities. In Yobe State, for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Coming up on the news, UN troops wounded as fighting flares in DR Congo's Sake town. We will bring the details after the short timeout. Stay with us. Now, the death of Ghana's Deputy Finance Minister, John Kuma, has triggered a by-election in Ejisu constituency in the Ashanti region in Ghana, where he served as a member of parliament since 2021. Kuma is said to have passed away last Thursday after a brief illness. Meanwhile, the general elections will hold in December 7, 2024, and will determine the presidency and members of parliament. The opposition party, National Democratic Congress, has suggested the use of drones, saying it will be aimed at saying it would help in preventing potential irregularities in the general election. At this point, joining us on the news to talk more about this is David Osabute, convener, Model ECOWAS Summit, and is also a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, and thank you for having me on your show.
So let's start from the issue around John Kumah, the late Deputy Finance Minister who recently died. Well, it was on the floor of the Parliament earlier this week, and it was scheduled to contribute to the debate on the budget on Thursday and Friday. But now his death must have come as a rude shock to the country, the legislative arm, and of course, by a large extension, Ghanaian citizens. How would you describe him? How would you describe his role and his contribution to the political and financial space in Ghana?
Right, thank you so much. So the rightly said, John Kumah was the Deputy Finance Minister, and the role of a Deputy Finance Minister plays a very important role in Ghana's economy. So, and then to have lost such a brilliant young man for us as the people of Ghana is something that it hasn't gone down well with us. And then also, if you look at the composition of Parliament now, now there seem to be an even spread in terms of the number of members of Parliament on both the MPP side and then the NDC side. So it means that what that means is that losing John Kumah would mean that MPP and NDC is going to be on the same level in terms of the number of their members of Parliament in Parliament. But John Kumah's death, a lot of Ghanaians didn't expect it, and for us, it's a very unfortunate development.
All right, let's now look at the political parties in Ghana, looking at the elections that will be coming up in a couple of months, around December, thereabouts. Now, we see the opposition party, that is the National Democratic Congress, canvass for the use of drones to monitor elections. Do you consider that novel and probably a potent way of ensuring free, fair, and credible elections?
Well, as to whether this is novel, I think that I will leave that to the Electoral Commission of Ghana. The Electoral Commission of Ghana is mandated by our constitution to determine the rules of the rules and regulations when it comes to credible, free and fair elections. And then the proposal from the National Democratic Congress to deploy drones for this election. I think that conversation will need to be had with the Electoral Commission. The National Democratic Congress will not be able to do anything without consulting the Electoral Commission or without working hand in hand with the Electoral Commission. So I think that we should leave that for the Electoral Commission. Already, Electoral Commission has raised some reservation about the use of drones already, as proposed by the National Democratic Congress, and I think that is a conversation that the NDC must have with the Electoral Commission, and for us to be able to align and agree on what the modalities are going into the elections on 7th December 2024.
Okay, so we see that the general elections will determine not only the president, but also members of parliament, with a power tussle between Ghana's two leading political parties, Nana Akufo-Addo's New Patriotic Party and the National Democratic Congress. Now, what are the political intrigues at play? And do you see the ruling party consolidating its position through the ballots?
I think that largely the elections this year will be driven by the economy. It will be driven by the economy. It will be driven by the track record of the current political party. That's the New Patriotic Party. Whether the MPP is going to win the elections or not, it will depend on their track record. The 8 years that they have been in power. Whether the NDC is going to do a comeback, and then you should also to just throw more light on this. This is the very first time in Ghana political history that we are having a former president come back and contest for the office of the president. As to whether he's going to win, I think that we need to leave that for the people of Ghana to determine, and it would also be dependent on what economic policies, his track record when he was president, as compared to to the current political party. So largely, it's going to be issues such as inflation will determine who wins elections. Issues such as interest rate. So largely, employment rate. All those things are going to determine who wins the elections come December 7, 2024.
Well, definitely, News Central will keep our eyes on these elections. Very, very pivotal for Africa and West Africa. Now, thank you so much, David Asabute, for talking to us.
All right, thank you for having me.
The news continues in West Africa, where we understand that in the lead-up to Senegal's presidential elections, the charismatic opposition leader Ousmane Sonko and his coalition's chosen candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye made a grand entrance into the southern region of the country on Saturday, arousing passion among supporters. Hundreds of supporters gathered to welcome Ousmane Sonko and Bassirou Faye as they embarked on their campaign journey in the vibrant Casamance region. Sonko, who was barred from running himself, has put his support behind Faye, endorsing him as the flag bearer for their coalition in the upcoming elections. With less than 2 weeks remaining until the pivotal vote, the political landscape in Senegal grows increasingly charged.
Ce qui doit avoir à Dakar, ça doit avoir à Thiès. Ce qui doit avoir à Thiès, ça doit avoir ici au Ziguinchor. C'est ça qu'on veut. On veut tous les biens du Sénégal.
We now head to East Africa, where South Sudan's Health Minister Yolanda Awel Deng has announced the closure of all schools as temperatures soar to unprecedented levels, reaching between 41 to 45 degrees Celsius. Addressing reporters in the capital, Juba, she emphasized the urgency of the situation. Minister Awel highlighted the severe health risks associated with heat waves, citing cases of heat-related deaths already reported across the country. Meanwhile, the Environment Ministry has issued a warning alerting the public to the potential health hazards posed by extreme heat. Undersecretary Bartel urged developed nations to reduce emissions, emphasizing the urgent need for global cooperation to mitigate the impact of climate change. And now in Central Africa, the United Nations says clashes have broken out between government forces and M23 rebels, leaving 8 UN peacekeepers injured after a brief lull in fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. UN mission head Bintou Keita said one of the peacekeepers was gravely wounded in the attack on Saturday in Sake. The strategic town lies 20 kilometers west of Goma, capital of North Kivu province, and witnesses said fighting resumed in the area on Saturday after several days of quiet. The witnesses added that by midday on Sunday, a precarious calm had settled over the region. A Congolese security source said the UN soldiers were wounded when 2 M23 shells landed on their camp in Sake's Mobambiro district. In North Africa, Tunisian authorities have announced that they had thwarted 17 irregular migration operations and rescued 587 migrants of sub-Saharan African nationalities and Tunisians who were about to cross the maritime border towards Europe. The Tunisian National Guard said in a statement that the naval units of the National Guard in the Sfax region were about to thwart 14 crossings of the maritime border and rescue 544 passers-by, including 4 Tunisians. The authorities were also able to arrest 10 wanted persons, including organizers and mediators, in addition to seizing 2 boats, 2 rubber boats, 13 marine engines, a light truck, and a motorcycle used for transportation. From other continents, we tell you that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has affirmed plans for a ground offensive in southern Gaza's Rafah, despite mounting international pressure and fears of civilian casualties. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Sunday, Netanyahu asserted Israel's determination to achieve its objectives in the conflict with Hamas, emphasizing the necessity of action in Rafah. Netanyahu's remarks coincide with ongoing talks in Doha aimed at brokering a ceasefire in Gaza, where Israel has been engaged in a military campaign against Hamas for over 5 months. The prospect of an incursion into Rafah has sparked widespread concern, particularly for the safety of Gaza's civilian population, many of whom have sought shelter in the city amid ongoing airstrikes.
המוחלט. שום לחץ בינלאומי לא יעצור אותנו לממש את כל מטרות המלחמה. חיסול החמאס, שחרור כל חטופינו, ולהבטיח שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום נגד ישראל. כדי לעשות זאת, נפעל גם ברפיח. זאת הדרך היחידה לחסל את שארית גדודי המרצחים של החמאס, וזאת הדרך היחידה להפעיל את הלחץ הצבאי הדרוש לשחרור כל חטופינו.
In the meantime, the Palestinian government has criticized widespread support of the much talked about Rafah offensive by Israeli citizens, saying it is an attempt to commit genocide by Israeli forces. The Palestinian ambassador to Nigeria also condemned the silence and non-action of world leaders, saying Israeli authorities have continued to commit war crimes while the world sits down and does nothing. The ambassador, while speaking to newsmen in Abuja, says that over 31,000 residents of Gaza have been killed, with another 73,000 injured and many more still buried under the rubble following continued offensive by Israeli forces against residents of Gaza. In business, the United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, says the situation in Syria now is extremely difficult following a meeting with Syria's Foreign Minister Faisal al-Mekdad in the capital, Damascus. According to a war monitor, Syria's war has killed more than 507,000 people ahead of the 13th anniversary of the conflict, which has displaced millions at home and abroad. In the meantime, the South African Federation of Trade Unions has reiterated its call for the protection of Eskom from the private sector. The Trade Union Federation said any solution suggested by government to deal with the crippling energy crisis should be in the best interest of the public. SAFTA was responding to the National Assembly passing the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill last week. The bill will pave the way for the unbundling of the embattled power utility. It also seeks to allow for a reasonable return commensurate with the risk. SAF2 spokesperson Trevor Shaku said the union is concerned that opening up electricity industry to private participation will lead to hefty electricity tariffs. And talking sports now, Super Eagles and Nottingham Forest striker Taiwo Awoniyi is set to miss out on the international friendlies in March when the Super Eagles of Nigeria face Ghana and Mali in Marrakesh, Morocco. Awoniyi was in line to play against Luton Town FC in the Premier League game on Saturday, but was ruled out a few hours before the game. Awoniyi, who just returned from a period out of action in January after undergoing groin surgery, has 6 goals and 3 assists in 20 Premier League appearances. Bundesliga strugglers Wolfsburg fired manager Nico Kovac on Sunday, with the German side yet to win in the league since the start of the year. Wolfsburg have not won any of their last 11 Bundesliga games under Kovac, a run which has left the side 14th position on the league table. Kovac's assistant and younger brother, Robert Kovac, would also leave the club with immediate effect, according to the club, Wolfsburg. Nico Kovac joined Wolfsburg ahead of the 2022-2023 season, in which the team finished 8th. After a 3-1 loss at home to Augsburg on Saturday, the team seats just 6 points above the relegation playoff place. We also tell you that Uganda's boxing duo of Kasim Ningi and Muzamido Semudu progressed to the quarterfinals at the ongoing 13th African Games in Ghana. Both Ningi and Semudu had their respective bouts halted prematurely to avoid severe damage to the opposition at the Bokum Sports Arena. Ningi needed a second-round knockout victory as Semudu's opponent, Olenu Akusan, was guarded by the referee after the Ugandan had run riot. Semudu will now face Ghanaian fighter Henry Malm. That's all at this hour, but before we go, we'll take a look at some of our top stories. Governor Oborewori has condemned the brutal killing of soldiers in Delta State as tensions remain high. Extreme heat wave has forced schools closure in South Sudan. Finally, we told you that Tunisian authorities have foiled multiple illegal migration attempts, rescue 587 immigrants. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. And you can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onobanjo.